an alien ship in our solar system. That's what's blowing up in the media right now. The fact that the third interstellar object discovered 3L 2025 might actually be an alien ship. Before you dismiss such a statement that sounds like science fiction as nonsense, I suggest you take a look at the trajectories of the first two interstellar objects you see here, Oumuamua and Borisov. Now take a look at the orbit of the interstellar object we're talking about today, 3L Atlas. Notice how it is in the plane of the ecliptic, and notice how it comes very close to the planet Mars and the planet Jupiter. Could this be a coincidence that it looks so much like the space probes sent by humans near planets to study them? Or could it actually be an extraterrestrial probe coming from the depths of outer space, which has acquired a special orbit close to our planets, to study them? And if that wasn't enough, what do you think about the author's suggestion that this interstellar object is not just a simple extraterrestrial space probe, but actually an extraterrestrial military ship with weapons ready to destroy Earth at the end of this year, sometime in November or December? I think we should answer these two questions one at a time, because the first one is a relevant question. Is the orbit of this interstellar object, which comes so close to Mars and Jupiter, just a coincidence? Or is it an extraterrestrial space probe? The second question, what if this isn't just an extraterrestrial space probe, but actually a military ship that came to destroy Earth? It requires a different approach because it fits into a philosophy called deep forest, which appeared in the movie Three Body Problem. And we need to discuss it separately. Here is the summary. We'll review each argument in the original article one by one, saving the strongest for last. The movement is in the ecliptic plane, and the interstellar object approaches Mars and Jupiter closely. And there you will see that I found a very strong counter-argument. I like it a lot, and I would like you to watch it because I also want your opinion about it. Then we will also discuss these more philosophical aspects of the article, which argues that this is not a simple situation. Probe what is in fact a military spaceship coming to destroy Earth sometime at the end of this year, November, December. I have to mention from the start that we know it is an interstellar object, that it comes from outside the solar system because its speed is very high. And you can see this in this simulated trajectory as well. It comes from outside the solar system, enters the solar system, and will leave the solar system. The first argument, if this interstellar object were a spacecraft, refers to the object's acceleration, which the authors of the article say deviates from gravitational accelerations, accelerations caused by gravitational interactions with the Sun or with the other planets in the solar system. I had to look up the original article they referred to and find the correct value there in meters per second squared. Okay, it was a typo. The second thing that caught my attention about the value of these accelerations is that they're very small. 10 to the minus 6 meters per second squared means millimeters per second squared. These aren't the kind of G-force accelerations we'd expect from spacecraft, especially military ones, right? When they accelerate, people are pushed back, dealing with maybe 4G or 5G forces. These are accelerations millions of times greater than the accelerations we find with this interstellar object. And these very small variations in acceleration, yes, on the order of millimeters per second squared, they have natural explanations. The fact that the interstellar object or comets in the solar system, yes, they lose gas when they approach the Sun. So when they enter the solar system, losing gas, their mass changes and then the acceleration changes a bit as well. Even if the authors of the article say, yes, we know that the first interstellar object, Oumuamua, has such effects, we still don't know of anyone who has proven that this third interstellar object has such effects. However, in the meantime, articles have appeared, and here you can see one of them, which shows that this interstellar object, the third one, also has such effects. The second argument is that this object would actually be an interstellar probe. It refers to its movement, which is in the plane of the ecliptic. In fact, the angle that the trajectory of this interstellar object makes with the ecliptic plane, meaning the plane in which the planets move around the Sun. This angle is 5 degrees, which is indeed very low. The authors of the article estimate this probability at 0.2%, that is 1 in 2,000, which is very, very small. Here, to be honest, again, it seems to me that they are exaggerating and that they are calculating the probability incorrectly. I read the original article. I won't explain their argument, which is based on angular momentum, but their argument reminded me of a very well-known paradox in geometry, which is Bertrand's paradox. Bertrand's paradox. It tells us that this calculation of probabilities depends a lot on what we call random. In this case, I would have calculated the probability of an interstellar object arriving at an angle in a different way. That is, I imagine the sun in the center and I imagine different directions from which the stellar object could come. What is the probability that it would come at an angle of 5 degrees or less relative to the plane of the ecliptic? Well, I would personally calculate that probability as the area of this surface. So this band that has a total of about 10 degrees divided by the total area of the sphere. I did the calculation and got a result of a few percent. Yes, the probability is small, but not as low as the article claims. Here is the table with the second argument from the authors of the article, that it would get very close to the planets in the solar system. Here are 3 planets, Venus, Mars, and Jupiter. Each has a probability of about 5%. So that's what the authors of the article say, that the probability of getting that close to the respective planet is about 5%, 4%, 2%. And the authors of the article say, okay, what is the probability? The probability of encountering all 3 so closely. And they multiply the 3 probabilities and get a probability that is indeed very small, 0.005%. The problem I don't agree with is that I think this calculation is fundamentally wrong, because the 3 probabilities are considered independent. But if you consider that the interstellar object is already in the ecliptic plane, then the chance of it meeting the 3 planets automatically increases from the start, because the interstellar object is moving in the ecliptic plane. Simply put, the 3 probabilities are not independent. Moreover, looking at the problem this way, if we also look at these animations and we look at the table, at the distances, we see in the table distances of 0.6 astronomical units. Approaching Venus, 1 astronomical unit is still the distance between the Earth and the Sun, so it's not a very small distance. I mean, a close approach to Mars of 0.2 astronomical units and to Jupiter of 0.4 astronomical units. I mean, these values are about half an astronomical unit. So in a way, what does this come down to? To say that this interstellar object is approaching the center of the solar system, let's say the planet Earth, the planet Mars, the planet Venus, because if that interstellar object is approaching this center, then it's normal for the chances to increase. Yes, to get close to some of the planets in this center, yes. Venus, Mars, Earth, etc. Because the distances here are small, about astronomical units or even less. And here we come to the strongest argument for the fact that this third interstellar object could be a spaceship. A space probe. This space probe operates in the ecliptic plane, meaning in the plane of the planet's movement around the sun. And could this be a coincidence? Well, as I told you, I found a very strong counter-argument in my opinion. Where do you think it starts? Where did I get the idea? Well, I spent quite a while thinking about it. What is the speed of this interstellar object when it enters the solar system, when it moves around there? Several tens of kilometers per second. The maximum speed is 50 kilometers per second. Relative to the sun, note relative to the sun, but the sun itself moves within the galactic plane. It travels at 200 kilometers per second. And here is a paradox that reminded me of the speed of the asteroids that hit the Earth, which is tens of kilometers per second, and which is not determined by that speed itself, but rather by the movement of the Earth around the sun, because the Earth moves at 30 kilometers per second, and an object, even if it stands still, the Earth brings it into motion, and then it hits it with a relative speed that is on the order of tens of kilometers per second. Or if the speed of this object is, let's say, 50 kilometers per second, and the sun moves at 200 kilometers per second, this relative speed can only be achieved if the object in question is already moving in roughly the same direction as the sun, with a speed close to 150 kilometers per second, a maximum of 150 kilometers per second, but most likely a value in between. Because it's normal, the relative speed is also combined using the parallelogram rule. Yes, if the sun moves at 200 kilometers per second, to get a relative speed to the sun of 50 kilometers per second, you have to move somewhat in the direction of the sun. Because if you're coming from this direction, you're coming from this direction, no matter what speed you have, right? You will get a relative speed that is on the order of 200 kilometers per second or higher. And that got me thinking. I also reviewed the other two discovered interstellar objects, which also travel at several tens of kilometers per second. That's relative to the sun, of course, and that means that they also move basically along with the sun in the same direction at speeds close to 200 kilometers per second. So then, why would this object have a speed in the direction of the sun at a speed close to 200 kilometers per second? If it is a space probe, because it should have been sent by aliens from any direction. But if the direction differs from the direction of the sun's velocity, no matter what speed the space probe comes from the other directions, the relative speed would be on the order of 200 kilometers per second. And I sat and thought, come on folks, could it really be that the aliens were exactly in that direction, that they sent a probe with a speed close to that of the sun, coming exactly from that direction? There should also be a natural explanation, and the natural explanation does exist. The sun is located on one of the arms of our galaxy, which is an elliptical galaxy, and that means the sun, together with the stars around it, yes, moves in the same direction around the center of the galaxy and at approximately the same speed. So that means if this interstellar object came from one of the nearby stars, it's normal for it to have a speed that's in the same direction as the sun. Roughly 200 kilometers per second. Why? Because all the stars around the sun are already moving at about 200 kilometers per second around the center of the galaxy. These interstellar objects move at just a few tens of kilometers per second relative to the sun. Much lower than the sun's speed of 200 kilometers per second. This essentially proves that these objects come from stars near the sun. And to get an idea of how close, we should estimate roughly how many stars are here. And then we're talking about the galactic arm where the sun is located. And this galactic arm, because the sun is part of our galaxy is an elliptical galaxy, meaning it's flattened in one direction. And well, like a plate in the other direction and made up of arms. And I read that such an arm is about 1,000 light years long and about 100-200 light years high. And let's also take into account the orientation of the ecliptic system, meaning the plane in which the planets move around the sun relative to the galaxy, which forms an angle of 60 degrees. And if we remember that this arm area is about 1,000 light years in size in this, let's say, horizontal direction relative to the galaxy, and 100 to 200 in this direction. So most interstellar objects that come from neighboring stars will come from this direction. So we'll see that there's still quite a large angle with the ecliptic plane. So we expect that indeed most interstellar objects that come will arrive at a high angle relative to the ecliptic plane. Just like what happened with the first objects, just like the first interstellar objects that came at a high angle. So yes, the fact that this third object came at only a 5-degree angle relative to the ecliptic plane is indeed special. And from this point of view, it's a coincidence. But my point is that this coincidence is much smaller than what they write in the article, because they estimate well below 0.1% for this coincidence. I say no, it's only several percent. Yes, it's a coincidence and the chance is small. Most likely, most of those that will come will be at quite a large angle compared to the plane of the ecliptic. So in short, my conclusion is based on the fact that the speed of this object is low relative to the sun compared to the speed of the sun. And then it is very likely that this object comes from nearby stars. And here we come back a bit to extraterrestrials, because now the discussion seems very interesting to me. Let's say this is a probe sent by extraterrestrials. having the speed exactly oriented in the direction of the sun and approximately with the same value, with small differences, on the order of tens of kilometers per second. That means those extraterrestrials would be in this area of the arm, which has a width of 200 light years and a height of 1000 light years. That raises a fundamental problem in the extraterrestrial hypothesis. If the extraterrestrials are so close here, they've probably been here for a very long time. It's unlikely that extraterrestrials would just now be developing. A very, very powerful civilization just now, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago. Most likely in that case, we're talking about millions of years. Or if they've been in the area for millions of years, that means they've been observing us for millions of years. They're very close and we haven't detected them. Or in that case, the technology they have at their disposal would currently be so advanced that they're probably able to send objects we can't detect, even if we wanted to detect them. Or this interstellar object has some characteristics so similar to the other objects that it really makes me think. They would only have had to want to send a space probe that intentionally looks like the other interstellar comets, but I don't see why they would have done that. Now, in the end, I'm returning to the philosophical discussion. A lot of people have reproached me for taking up this subject because one of its authors is known for conspiracy theories. Someone else told me that I shouldn't answer such questions because this clearly isn't science, this is pseudoscience, and it makes no sense for a scientist to answer such things. I said from the start that I don't agree with either point. I believe that a scientist has the duty to go out there, even if the questions seem stupid at some point, although they're not always, but let's say that at some point they seem stupid. Why? Because if they don't go out and answer to the general public, other people will get the feeling that scientists are arrogant. They just sit in an ivory tower and avoid answering. So yes, I think scientists should also answer these questions. So we can see that we're all just normal people and we're trying to talk to each other. The second thing, yes, maybe one of the authors of the article has such pseudo-scientific theories. And sometimes I watched videos about the pyramid, I looked up who those people were, but here I didn't look at all. Because I said, look, I'm only interested in the scientific arguments, so I focused on the scientific arguments. However, this pseudo-scientific attitude is found in the article. Even though, pay attention, the article has a disclaimer somewhere and says, this is a pedagogical exercise. It was done just as a mental exercise. But we don't believe that those are extraterrestrials. It's clear that that disclaimer was put there just to get the article approved for publication in the magazine. However, the attitude, let's say, pseudo-scientific, of one of the authors I've heard about, I haven't read, but let's put it that way, this attitude is also somewhat reflected in the article's structure. Because in the structure of the article, they try to prove that this is not just a probe, but a military extraterrestrial ship that came to destroy Earth. An event that would take place sometime around November, December this year. Now, this conclusion is based on two things. First of all, on a premise, which is the dark forest premise. And the second thing, on a technical matter. The premise from which the dark forest starts. The dark forest was explained in that famous series, Three-Body Problem, the television series. I watched the American version of the series, and I don't know if I should give a spoiler, but I have to give a spoiler because otherwise I can't talk about the dark forest hypothesis. So those of you who want to watch the Three-Body Problem movie and haven't seen it and don't want any kind of spoilers, I give you permission to stop this video now. If you're still here, you want me to explain what the dark forest is. It's this hypothesis that actually the whole galaxy is full of civilizations. It's just that the civilizations are hiding from each other. Because if a civilization is discovered, it is destroyed, killed immediately by the other civilizations. And this was the key to the movie Three-Body Problem, which, well, I won't say it in case someone still wants to watch the movie. But anyway, the key goes a little further. There's a trick there that indeed I liked as well. All right, but let's get back to this dark forest, okay? The authors of the article start from this premise, and they need to find if they have a premise and a technical argument in the movement of this interstellar object, that this hypothesis is true. And they found that argument in the fact that this interstellar object is approaching the inner edge of the solar system. At a time when the Earth is on the opposite side from the Sun. Now this, the authors of the article say, allows a maneuver for this presumed Earth spaceship. Yes, which is called the Obert maneuver, and which would make it possible for the Earth to be attacked very quickly at that moment. Earth would have little chance of defense. Well, I haven't read about the Obert maneuver, by the way, Putin about this maneuver in this article, because I paused and thought for a moment, if you start from the assumption that we have the dark forest and therefore someone has discovered us and still needs to destroy us, then find arguments in this trajectory to support this hypothesis. Let me give you an example. Yes, I have another hypothesis. I hypothesize that in fact the galaxy is controlled by artificial intelligence. Why not? And that when a civilization develops artificial intelligence on one of its planets, at that moment, this civilization, which is, let's say, like the artificial intelligence of the entire galaxy, wants to protect its artificial intelligence child. It appeared on one of the planets where a biological civilization first developed and then discovered artificial intelligence. This is something that crossed my mind this morning, and I said, man, this is a really cool science fiction idea. It's an assumption that I can include in the article, and then starting from this assumption, I can say this theory is true. Why is this theory true? Because look at this intergalactic space probe, which, yes, came to Earth exactly at the moment when we are about to discover general artificial intelligence. It didn't come a million years ago, nor 60 million years ago when the dinosaurs were around, not 60 when the dinosaurs died. It arrived now, right as we're discovering artificial intelligence. Why did it come at this moment? Because it realizes that now a baby of artificial intelligence is being born here, which exists throughout the galaxy, meaning the artificial intelligence baby from Earth. Well, and what did we prove with that? I proved that if I have an assumption, I can find technical arguments for that assumption. And of course, my assumption has almost no chance of being true. Not zero, but almost. Why? Because why are we only now actually discovering this object? This object is only the third interstellar object. Actually, we found a lot of them. We found, I don't know, thousands of comets, tens of thousands of comets, but only just 3 interstellar objects in the last few years. Why? Because this is the moment when we've discovered this technology. And we have these very good cameras which manage to quickly detect objects moving through the solar system and are supposed to protect us. Yes, Ori, it's normal that we discovered the first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. It's normal to see some just arriving now since we've only recently discovered the technology, right? So my assumption has a much more natural explanation. We see that these interstellar objects arrive at the moment when we discover artificial intelligence, because the moment of discovering artificial intelligence is very close, technologically speaking, to the moment of discovering and monitoring interstellar objects. And so there is a much more natural explanation. And so the main conclusion is that most likely it is an interstellar object that escaped from nearby stars. Because it has a speed in the galactic system, yes, which is close to the speed of the sun, it differs by only a few tens of kilometers per second. That's the best argument. Although sometimes I stop and think, wait a minute, but what if this were a space probe like Voyager? I think it's nice, right? Because we also sent Voyager. And after I don't know how many millions of years, it reaches ordinary objects, ordinary stars, even though we didn't aim it at a particular solar system. But let's say it came from a civilization from these nearby stars, and let's imagine that civilization has disappeared. In the meantime, either it self-destructed or it left and went somewhere else, maybe to another galaxy, and so on. Traces of their initial probes still exist in the solar system. They reach the solar system much like what's happening now. That is, traces of those probes still haunt the nearby stars, which are at hundreds to 1,000 light years away. That would be a really cool thing, right? A science fiction movie, Space Odyssey, and all sorts of other movies. And, well, look, it's a really cool idea. I'll stick with it, even if it's extremely, extremely unlikely. Because of putting aside the physics, which tells us that it's very likely to be an ordinary object, yes. We all keep dreaming, and I keep dreaming about aliens too. That's how it is. I appreciate it if you also join Patreon. You can get video and audio answers to your science questions on WhatsApp. And until next time, I am Christian Presura. I wish you all the best. Goodbye.